All right, we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Amplifying F# episode. Today, I'm your host, Jimmy Bird. We're going to be talking about FsToolkit.ErrorHandling version 5. Before we get into that, just take a brief moment to kind of walk you through what Amplifying F# is. The Amplifying F# is an initiative to connect contributors to open source projects. And so if you'd like to help make the F# ecosystem better, this is what we're for. You can come to our website, amplifyingfsharp.io, click join us today. And we just come in here, you can fill out the form. We kind of ask for your name, what time zone you're in, the kind of topic that you'd like to work on. And so there's various things that the F# ecosystem needs or wants. And so kind of help match up talent with people who need to work with this stuff. So you can either specify a specific issue you want to work on or a specific project you'd like to contribute to. If you don't know what you'd like to do, you can specify figuring it out. Also, if you just want to display or show off a open source project that would like contributions, we accept that as well. Also, you can donate to us using Open Collective. We started collecting about 2 weeks ago. So if you click on Open Collective, you can come here and donate. Just want to mention that we have 41 contributors currently, which is thank you very much for everyone that's helped us here. You can actually see what our current balance is and kind of what we've collected and see how much our budget is. One of the things that I like to mention too is the first company that we've had is 7 Past 9. I'd like to make a big thank you for them for contributing. And speaking of everyone that's contributed, I've contributed myself, but we are all individual contributors, and we can only make small dents that we can. I would encourage you to talk to your employers to contribute to us as well. And they may be asking, what do we get when we kind of contribute? And speaking of that, what we're kind of using our money for is the first thing is we actually hired Florian from Amplifying F# team to write some analyzers for Ionide. And so you can come and check these out. We have it on our Connect. If we come to Connect, it's in our updates. You can see what these are doing. Basically, you added 7 analyzers. If you click on the pull request, we can actually see what these are. And it was actually merged 2 minutes ago. Hooray. But you can see what these will potentially do and what they should do. So if they see a certain pattern, they'll let you have a code fix for them as well. Anything you'd like to add to that, Florian?
No, I mean, it's going to be published on NuGet soon, and people are free to check them out. We can do more of these kind of pull requests or other initiatives if we collect some more. So yeah, really happy that we have the opportunity to do this, and who knows what the future brings. So thanks, everyone.
And
Thank you,
go for it, Edgar.
No, so thank you, Florian. This is really one of the things that the F# tooling, the editor experience needs more analyzers, more like ways of helping newcomers to learn the language and to actually understand why some specific patterns are not recommended and why you should be using the new one. So yeah, as the language grows, as the ecosystem grows, we need to be doing some more like this. So yeah, thank you, Brad.
Also, just like to mention, last week, Edgar was working on the obsolete attribute. You can see the pull request is still open, but it's pretty much done, just kind of waiting for review. And so this will be a great addition to the tooling to make sure we see warnings correctly. If you'd like to come check out, go for it.
That one, it was actually just needs one more approval. It has an approval from Vlad, needs an approval from Thomas. So hopefully will be merged in maybe next week or so. But just one thing to mention that while fixing that bug, we also fixed 2 more issues on the same PR that related to how obsolete attributes not being considered on another cases. So yeah, it's really good to see that, you know, you can fix one and then you can kind of also see that you can improve more things. So yeah, this will also be fixed as part of that.
That's great. As always, you can come to our homepage and go to sessions. You can see what previous sessions we've done. And you can come in and click on these links and see the videos. You can also come to our YouTube channel by going to Amplifying F Sharp. We have videos under videos. We've been recording, trying to have high definition videos here on the videos that we upload after our streams, but you can also check out all our previous live streams under the live tab. So if videos looks a little bare, it's because it's under live. You can see right now we have our own live video. With that all out of the way, is there anything else anyone wants to mention before we get started?
Go for it.
All right. Then our presentation today is going to be me talking about FsToolkit Error Handling version 5. And so there's going to be quite a few changes for this. Nothing particularly new or fun, but it's a lot of breaking changes. And so I'd like to kind of just go over them, talk through them a little bit, maybe actually get some feedback on some of these decisions that are being made and whether or not they're, you know, the best or what can be done, what kind of things would be better. And so if we actually come to look at the milestones, there's a few things I have in the milestone, and if anyone else would like to see anything added, you know, please mention it or look through issues. One of the first things that I kind of wanted to talk about is one of the first breaking changes is removing ply. If we actually look at the NuGet package here for FsToolkit.ErrorHandling, let's see, this one isn't the problem, it's the task result currently. So long time ago, before F# 6.0, there was no built-in task computation expression. And there's been various builders over the course of F#'s time in the ecosystem. And one of them was ply, and that's what we chose to use for our task results. And main reason we have a separate package is because FsToolkit, if we actually looked at FsToolkit's dependency, all it depends on is F# core. And a lot of people really just want that kind of like, here's just F# core, I don't want anything else. This library is pretty simple in some concepts, so like it shouldn't have a giant dependency graph. And so it's usually better to have like smaller dependencies so you can pick and choose without bringing in a whole bunch of stuff. And so we've had ply as the task result, using as our task result for a long time. A couple versions back, I decided that we'd want to still use it, but also use the task computation expressions for certain things. And so you can actually look at the dependency graph here, which has net standard and net standard 2.1. And net standard is still using ply, and the net standard 2.1 is not. And there's a little bit of NuGet magic going on here, but essentially what this means is the net standard is going to follow this like path of like dependencies. And if you look at the FsToolkit error handling dependency, I'm also only depending on 4.7.2 of F# core. This is a very old version of F# core. Like, we look at where 4.7.2, like this was released, you know, almost 4 years ago at this point. And there's, you know, it's a lot of stuff has been basically kind of pinned to this or has a lot of like uses of it, but a lot of older code might be stuck on it. And I didn't want to break anyone for a long time. And so I didn't update this, but I did if you're on net standard 2.1 or higher, this kind of means this is a very specific thing, but there's mostly like .NET Core users. There's a few small mobile things, but it's mostly if you're a .NET Core user, you'll get all the new stuff. And if you're kind of stuck on older stuff, you can stay with the old F# core. So removing ply is one of the first things I wanted to do, or one of the things I'm doing is actually removing that, which also means I'm going to be setting the minimum for FsToolkit error handling to F# core 6. And so I'm actually going to be reducing this on the net standard to this, or to be 6.0, but this will also be 6.0 as well in the net standard 2.0. That's one of the first breaking changes. I mean, it's not like a lot of code around this particular thing. This is just about NuGet dependency management. So if you are kind of on an older version of you can't get off an F# older version, if you can't upgrade to F# core 6.0, yeah, you're gonna have to stay on an older version of FsToolkit error handling. It's been a little while. I understand it kind of sucks, but that's kind of the reality of that. If you want someone to maintain that, we're open to very big contributions, and we will hire somebody to maintain your specific older version if you want. So basically so this pull request, if you want to come in and check this out, I've already did this work a little while ago. This is just doing basically all the work I just said, and you can check out all the changes that I had to make that happen if you really want to go through it. The next thing that's just kind of mentioning, this is going to be kind of quick, but I'm just going to be building against .NET 8. .NET 7 is going out of support in what, 2 months or so. May 17th, I think the date is. So this is just about being able to build against .NET 8. Not a lot of changes here. Just this is basically just ensuring that it tests against F# 8 fine. There's also some additions to like the dev container. So when you're actually developing against FsToolkit error handling, you can just pull in, use the dev container, and it has all the dependencies that you need to be able to work against this project. One of the other changes, this is kind of a breaking change, but most people won't probably notice this at all, is I'm also adding the Microsoft BCL async interfaces to the net standard 2.0. So when you look at the dependency graph here, let me don't apply. You look at the dependency graph here, it's just on F# core, but we're also going to be adding this library, which is Microsoft BCL interfaces. If we take a look at what that is here, this is essentially another trick of like how .NET does its loading of DLLs, but basically allows us to get access to specific types that aren't in net standard 2.0. And specifically, that would be the iasync enumerable, the enumerator, and the iasync disposable and value task. And so if you're using net standard, you don't have access to these typically without this little helper here, or this little interface here. This will allow us to actually incorporate these into the operation of the task CEs. So one of the things that you may not be able to do immediately. Let's go into a task results test for the moment, because I don't think I have this supported yet, or did I? I might have made it support already. I think this was well. Okay, I do have support in this, so I'll kind of show what can happen. So if we look at task results CE, let's go to the tests for this particular one. So typically when you are, whenever you're kind of using a task computation expression, there's a couple of things that you can do, and then one of them is using disposables. And so if you look, this is just a simple dispose call. The thing that you can't typically do is use iasync disposable. So, and specifically this task doesn't let you do that. So let's kind of look at creating a test here. So let's go ahead and make a version of this that deals with async disposable. So this is going to dispose async instead, and this actually needs to return a value task. So the interface for this has been a return value task, and if you're not familiar with what the async disposable does, it's basically dispose, but allows you to clean up things asynchronously. And so this is useful for like database connections or anything that kind of has to have some type of async cleanup rather than blocking your current thread. So typically with like the async task or the task computation expression here, if I try to use and I do make async disposable and I try to just do something like expect equals true, true. This actually does work because which task are we using here? Oh, this one actually does work because I think we're on a newer version, but if we're actually on like net standard, you might not have access to this. So if I actually take this code, which I think we can emulate this by using a script file. So it's a task dispose. By default, F# script files are tied to net standard for some reason, and I don't particularly know why, but that's kind of what it is. So let's go take our little disposable here. Go to this. See, we don't even have access to value task. No, we might have access to it. And then maybe I'm just wrong about this nowadays. We'll see. So now if I try to do a use, okay, you can see here, yep, so this is kind of the case. So if you actually look at the implementation of the task computation expression in F# core, you'll see that this is if deft off. Async disposable is not compatible. And so you won't be able to use this in that standard 2 context. That mostly doesn't affect a lot of people, but it does affect people who are kind of still using things that have net standard 2.0. But basically this allows us to clean up a lot of code and be able to keep things consistent across without having to do a lot of if-defs. So it gives support for people who need it, and it also makes the code base a little bit cleaner. So this is kind of come check out this pull request. This is basically doing the kind of the same thing, which is just going through, and you can see that I'm removing a lot of if-defs. Like we don't actually have to have a lot of if-defs around stuff anymore, which is nice from that aspect. Those are all the things that have gotten completed or have been merged in. Does anyone have any questions about that? I don't know if I see any messages in chat at all. I don't see any.
No, all good for now.
All right, cool. There's a couple other breaking changes that I potentially want to make, and I kind of want to at least talk through them a little bit and kind of understand where they're coming from and what we're trying to do with them. One of the first ones is overload issues with task results on generic functions, and so this issue illustrates a certain specific problem here where if you try to use task result and you just pass in some function and you bind against some function, it will not let you. It doesn't actually have some type inference problem, or it has some type inference problem here, whereas task does not have this type inference problem. And so we can kind of illustrate that by doing the same thing here. We'll just come into the script file. Don't do this anymore. And you can see that if we hover over some function, it thinks that this generic requires some type of task, and it compiles fine. However, if we used FsToolkit, let's go ahead and reference it. FsToolkit.ErrorHandling. Let's copy this function in here. We can see today this will not work. It's giving some very weird error message here, which is like unique overload for source cannot be based on prior information. And there's a lot of stuff going on here. It gets some crazy SRTP stuff going on. A lot of fun stuff. And the only way you can really solve this is by actually explicitly giving this is going to take something which is going to return a task result. And then I close that correctly. What did I do? Oh, it's because it's loaded the same function. Okay. This section is unit. Okay, there we go. So you have to explicitly give that time. Now that's kind of annoying because most of the time you want to basically kind of just assume that this would be some type of task result. The reason why this happens today is because if we go back to the actual error message, you can see that it's trying to figure out like, hey, there's a bunch of things called source. And if you've used F# or FsToolkit's error handling, you can see that like you can bind against some various different sources. So for instance, if I want to, I can potentially bind against a task.from result. So I can actually just bind against the task here and get the value out. I could also bind against some result case. So we also see that we get the result out of this. We can also bind against even choices. So there's various ways that you can bind against this. You can even bind against asyncs. And so there's various things that you can bind against. And how this happens is this source overload. So you look at this again, it's complaining about can't find a particular source overload for this because these are all based on some type of like priority. There's when you do this is deep lore about how the internals of like the F# compiler works, but essentially when you have multiple overloads, you have to, you've probably seen this where the F# or the .NET team adds some APIs and your time preference no longer works because there's not, they can't figure out which overload to choose based on your current path. This is kind of the same problem, is there's a certain priority that is given to overload methods. One of the things that's really annoying is, yeah, you can't do that. So like, what is that particular overload? I actually have a gist for this. I want to kind of touch on these gists. You can look at the simple one. This stub. This one has an explanation, but this foopsie has a small amount of code. And so this is going to give us the simplest kind of explanation. So when you're building a computation expression, go look at either the official documentation or F# for fun and profit if you kind of want to get a bigger detail on that. But you'll typically implement some methods that the compiler knows about. So you end up having return or bind. And these are kind of gives you the basic bare bones for a normal computation expression. And so this would be just the task result kind of builder that allows you to build just bare bones minimum task results. But there's also this something called a source member, and source members allow you to teach the F# compiler to say, hey, if you see that you're binding against this type, convert it to this type. And so instead of having multiple bind overloads, you can have multiple source overloads and just lift things into your specific case. So this source member is about just defining the identity type, which is like our core base type that we're working with, which is a task of result. And so if we want to bind against something called result here, we also add another source member and we add result, and then we want to return a type that's going to basically match our like core types that we're matching against here. And so that would be, you'd want to create a task from result of this. So while this is a little bit kind of inefficient from a maintenance standpoint, this is a lot easier. It's a lot harder to have a lot of other overloads that do all the things that you potentially want. That being said, there's also still some binding resolution issues, typically, with how these kinds of things work. And so there's a trick that someone found years ago. Don't know exactly who found it, but I've been using it for quite a while. And you can use extension methods to change how the priority of overload resolution works. And so, for instance, this here is actually taking a result of a list. This will be important in a moment. And if we look here at this lower priority, we'll get into some of this priorities here. But when you actually bind against this code, actually, you know what, I just steal this and put this in. File here. So when you actually go ahead and create this extra overload resolution, you're saying also I want to bind against task. Why don't I have this up here? Let's put that up here for a moment. This guy out. We're actually getting the same kind of error message here that we were seeing a little bit earlier, which is kind of interesting. It can't actually determine which thing to use, which source member to use here. Do we use task or do we use task of result? The FsToolkit compiler doesn't know how to deal with this. And so there's some tricks that you can apply, which is this one, which is about overload resolution. So if I actually use this on an overload, it's a lower binding priority. It's a lower priority in the overload resolution. So it actually does work. Now, this is a fun quirk of the FsToolkit compiler. There's actually a issue about trying to fix this. I think I have that in this particular one. Let's see. Yes, this F# suggestion. So this F# suggestion here is basically about like if there's a more specific overload, try to choose that.
And just to
That's kind of
mention
what
that that is available, that's a proven principle. It's just waiting for someone to implement this, isn't it?
Yes. So if someone would really like this, we would absolutely want to do an amplifying F# episode on this.
Yeah, that would be amazing because this is just, in my opinion, a quirk of how the overload resolution works. If this can be improved in any way, it will be even better. And I would argue even that error message that you just show us, it's my personal opinion, the candidates part that we were showing there, I don't think is useful. It's so when I read that message, the only thing that sticks to my head is the first two lines, like a unique overload for source couldn't be determined known type of argument task result int generic A. That would be enough for me. The rest I don't think is really necessary, and sometimes it's even distracting because when you see at the error message, you can see that maybe the 50 or 60% of your screen is basically full of those candidates for the resolution. I don't think that's useful, to be honest, but yeah, that's a different discussion, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when if I was like directly calling foodbuilder.source, right? Like, because I know what I'm calling in terms of CEs, all that stuff kind of abstracted away from me, and I don't know. And that is a good point that this is a very bad error message for this particular context.
Yeah.
I can imagine this having very similar problems with custom operators and computation expressions that have those, or not custom operators, what are they? Custom, what are they called?
Which
When you
one?
specify your own keywords, essentially.
Oh yeah, operate the custom operators.
Is it a custom operator? Okay.
Operations, I think.
What is it?
Custom operations.
Operations. There we go.
Operation. Okay.
English is great. But yeah, so like this is still kind of so as a library author that makes CEs, we've been able to figure out this like weird quirk and solve it. And so you can see here, similar kind of problem here is I have a result of a very specific type. This is, if you actually look at what we're doing here, we're actually doing a result with an error list. And so if I want to bind against something with an error list, I can do that here. But if I want to bind against something that doesn't have a list, I need to be able, so this particular error here, if I didn't have this method, I couldn't bind. Same kind of problem. Doesn't know which overload I need to take here. Similarly, if I actually wanted to incorporate something like, well, what if I want to bind against arrays? Like this doesn't match anything as well here. This is also kind of weird, but it doesn't work. So if I wanted to actually add arrays here, I'd have to do something like result math error, this of array, and then now we end up with the basically the output type that we're incorporating here. But then yeah, we see we get some other fun resolution issues. So we have to end up, so this is where the higher priority stuff comes into play. We want to kind of play with where we order things. And so if I put it here, this doesn't work either because it can't determine whether or not we want the regular or the array. And here's the fun quirk now. The last opened namespace will take priority on your overloads. So we can see here we have this like sequence here. You can see I was kind of already thinking ahead on this. If I put this down here instead, and see this one's not going to work anymore. But if I put this down here, now it works because this has a higher priority of binding than this. But the things on the type itself take the highest priority. So these will be looked at first and then the last thing that's opened. So actually these auto opens are helping us. And so if I did them more explicitly, we can see that this this works now. But if I flip these orders, stuff's going to not work. This is a fun quirk. There's a lot of little magic in here that you have to kind of know about the abstract compiler to make this all kind of work.
This is what you call a cares knowledge.
Yeah, it's very that's kind of also why I was like, oh, this would be a good video to talk about this, kind of bring this out, show why this is all kind of goofy.
We have a question in YouTube.
Oh, that's what that. Show the line connecting the
open calibrates to the end calibrates.
that
Yeah, I think so.
one I don't know. Is it not? I have way too many extensions. I know I had rainbow braces. Might be indent rainbow. I don't know if indent rainbow cares about that. Might not be indent rainbow.
Oh, he's asking about the extension. I was looking for the overload and overload resolution method extension. I see.
Yeah, I don't know exactly which extension this is.
I think it's something called indents or something like that, smart indents or something like that.
This might be something that's actually just turned on from VS Code, but I don't exactly know, unfortunately. Like I said, I have so many extensions, it could be any of these, fortunately. Maybe Rainbow Indents, that looks like the only one that's kind of got something going on. But I think I also had Rainbow Braces at one point, but I think that's kind of built in now. So,
Right, no worries. Thank you, Jimmy.
yep. So this is so that was a long explanation to get to basically this overload resolution thing. Long story short, I do have a pull request open for this that fixes this. This is actually the branch that I'm currently on. Actually, take a look at the task result tests. Do I have a type inference one? Let's see. This is called inference checks. So this is the inference checks here. So this is the test that I wrote for this, and so now we can see that we can not have to have a explicit thing here. So if I put a unit here, make this a function. This more aligns to what the issue looks like, but same kind of general gist, which is now I can not have to specify and it'll take the task result correctly. So basically this was so you know how I mentioned I was doing a bunch of ordering things here. In this particular instance, I had to move stuff around. That's basically the gist of that particular PR. It's just me moving stuff around quite a bit, getting this to line up correctly. So this may not actually be a breaking change, but it is definitely something worth addressing because it is going to be, it may have effects on you, but it may also just make things nicer and easier for you to use too. So that one's out of the way. There's two other breaking changes I want to definitely talk about, and I don't think I'm going to have time to do anything with these today other than just discuss them, but I do want to at least address them. And so one of the first ones is moving the task results into the F# or the FsToolkit error handling package into the core package. And so mentioned before, I'm getting rid of apply, but now there's not really a reason to have a separate task result package. Really the only reason is because it wouldn't be a breaking change when people upgrade to V5. Like the thing here is I'm not sure which is the worst thing. Do I just bite the bullet and move stuff over into the F# core or the core FsToolkit package? But when people go up to V5, they're going to have to remove that task result package. That means they have to come to release notes, they have to read, they have to understand. And it's, you know, when you're in a panic because your boss told you to do this thing, how am I going to direct you? How do I tell you this? Like, how do I explain this to you in a way that's very like, as much as I can put it in release notes and stuff like that, it's still very much like, why did this change? I can't believe this. I'm just going to stay here. That's what happens, right? People get stuck on versions because of cheese moving, just because I wanted to put something in a package. I wanted to move my code around because I'm clever. But there really isn't a reason for this package to exist anymore. The only reason to keep it in a separate package for me as a maintainer currently is because Fable, we also support Fable. We don't, tasks aren't used in Fable. And I have to put a lot of if-defs around code to support Fable. And so as a maintainer, this is not much, like this is work. This is a lot of work for not much gain in that aspect. And I don't know if I'd like to kind of just talk through that if anyone has any opinions on that. I know it ends up being kind of a hard decision regardless. Like it feels like, you know, you're like, I want to reduce dependencies and it feels good. But those things have costs. And unfortunately, it's not just move code over and call it a day. I have to put a lot of if-defs around stuff to make sure Fable builds correctly. So it is still quite a bit of work to do.
I mean, as a library author, I think it makes sense, to be honest, for you to have less dependency, less things to maintain. From a user point of view, if you know there is a migration path, or there is some information that is on your face, and you will be able to quickly do that, should be okay. I mean, .NET is also an ecosystem that moves really fast, where you actually will be always using new stuff, and it will always be changing or moving code to use what's new on Microsoft, new shiny framework. So I don't think it's a major problem. But that's my opinion. I mean, I like to reduce.
I will say, as a library author, this is actually more work to move this stuff because of the if-def problem. Because currently, as it stands, this just ships and I don't have to think about it. This is just another project. It's not, there's nothing more work about this because it exists as it is today. The more work is I have to move stuff around, if-def. And then eventually once that's done, but it's not really, it's the same amount of code, more or less. I might lose Git history, actually. That it matters. Like moving files is kind of a annoyance in Git. I know there's ways of still keeping stuff around, but it's still kind of annoying. So like there is, it's one of those, it feels good from a developer point of view, but I'm still kind of like, I'm not gung-ho about this. I'm not really ready to do this immediately because of those other downsides. I don't know if you have an opinion at all, David or Florian. See, do we have anyone on the YouTube channel have any comments as well about?
Out of curiosity, how well informed are you of like the consumers of FsToolkit? Like how many really do the Fable thing, for example?
That is a little bit harder to track, I think, but I don't know because like from their standpoint, they're not going to seem to think different. Like this is a purely a maintainer problem.
Well, sort of if you know, for example, a couple of companies that really bet on this, that really want to have this keeping going, it's always interesting to have somebody try and get on board to maintain that little piece in there. We still had the same thing a little bit with Phantomus. Like Josh really wanted this true stop thing, and now he really still shows up to maintain that specific feature which he's very interested in, and that's sort of the thing that you can decide whether you still want to do it or not. So yeah, like if somebody in the audience is listening to this, if you use a certain thing, then show interest in it and step up if you still want to see this going in the next major versions.
Yeah, David, do you have any opinions on it? Or is that it's kind of a hard problem for you too?
Uh, I mean, it's your free time, so do whatever feels best to you, to be honest, because you're not getting a single bug out of it. And users have to accept that. So whatever you feel most comfortable with, and that's the reality of using open source. So users need to come to terms with that, to be honest. Yeah. And if people have an issue with that, yeah, they can pay for something else. So
Yeah, that's always the good point is just if you want to do it, can't ask somebody else to do free work for you all the time. In that case, I might poke Isaac and see if he'd be willing to do a session on this particular thing, if he would really want this.
Yeah, sounds good.
And in that
Well,
case, let's take a look. Oh, you guys, something else?
what is your gut feeling? What would be the way forward for you personally?
It's because like there's actually, if it was just move code over and just ship it without having to do a lot of the Fable if death stuff, I'd probably be a little bit more okay with just because it'd just be basically just move stuff, add it to the project, done. But then going in there and making sure if defs are lined up correctly, just getting that just a little bit more tricky, a little bit more work. And it's probably not too bad, but it is more. And because of that, on top of if people go to V5, will people just be like, oh no, they broke something, I can't go up to V5. There is still that like concern from like anytime I've ever dealt with just dependencies, like everyone has their own way of tracking how they want to do code and how they move stuff around. But like if you move stuff too much, people just get fed up with it. And I'm just trying to make that path, that on ramp to keeping that like momentum is, it hurts. But it is kind of weird to be like, well, it's in the core library. Why do I have to have a separate package now? Because of history, right? And so, but I don't know. It's mostly like newcomers. It makes sense for, but like people who are still living on the older stuff or have been using it for years, and it's never really been a problem for them. It's like the Newton soft problem. Like, what if Newton soft was just breaking things all the time? People would never use it. Like the reason it's so popular is because it was so adamant about trying to make sure that breaking changes didn't happen, or at least they had to happen for a very good reason.
Well, I think if you have some rationale of why things are broken, if it solves a certain problem, then you should be comfortable going with it.
Could you
If you just
release a version and just annotate all the stuff is obsolete, so people get like an old world version of warnings, maybe, so they know that there's some change coming up.
Yeah, I think that's possible. I know, well, Nougat does have a way of deprecating packages, but I don't know if once you deprecate a package, can you like publish updates to it still? Like, I don't know if it turns it into like an archive. I don't know how that workflow works. If it's basically just like a nice flag that tells people like, hey, stop using this package, but I can still like pump some updates to it just to kind of keep it alive for just a little bit, like that might be more kind of like enticing. But if it's mostly like now this is an archive package, I can't, even as a maintainer, I can't push stuff to it. That'd be a little kind of annoying. I don't know how that works, but it is an idea.
And the nice thing is, of course, you'll only see the pitchforks when you publish the version stable.
Yep.
So if you do push like a pre-release of this, people, then is really the time to speak up and then discuss this. I always like, if I published the release version and I had a couple of alphas, then it's your mistake in not, reacting any sooner to these kind of upcoming changes. So the responsibility can easily be sort of shifted to the consumer on that front.
Yeah.
Yeah, this thing is hard. I mean, every time you need to, you need to deal with different, with users of your library that will, in some way or form, will be affected. It's always going to be someone will have a different sensibility, different opinion. But I think my take is similar to what David is saying. Remember, this is something that is done, for the community, by the community, and it's not something that you have a lot to say in regards of how it's going to be managed. It's mostly what this will be, easier for you or for you to continue developing this library, and that's basically my take on it.
Yeah, I feel like I wouldn't be having these like problems or like this like hesitation if this library just was kind of like, a couple people knew about it and used it, but it's like this is a staple in the F# community at this point, and like I want to be very careful about making breaking changes in the ecosystem for something that's so prolific. You can deprecate specific versions. Interesting. Yeah, I have done this, but I didn't recall that because I've only done it a few times. Okay. Okay, cool. Thank you for looking that up, David. I think that might be the approach, is to make a deprecated versions and like have some alphas that are deprecated or something. Okay. I think I have a good feel on what I want to do with this at this point. And the last one I want to address for breaking changes here is a long time ago, F# allowed for something called applicatives to be put into it, which means you can use and bang in places. Now, I got a little feature happy and added this to all the task computation or all the computation expressions, but these don't necessarily work. Like what you expect out of and bang may be different. So in terms of like the validation computation expression, this allows you to accumulate errors. And so if we take a look at that, so if we actually take a look at the validation CD here, not spelled. If we actually run for multiple errors, so if I say like let error, I guess I should show off what result does, right? And so if we have let basically this will fail at the first run. So if I just make this a unit function, let's run this. FSI. We can see that the result comes out to be just hello. If I change this to validation, we will actually get the same exact result here. It is just be hello, but it's actually kind of a slightly different result. It's actually a result of errors. If I use and bang on this, allows us to say like, this allows us to accumulate errors as we go. We can see that error is hello and world. It's kind of cool. What do you expect to happen when I do result and it has anbay? I don't know. I didn't think this through. I just added it.
It should be the first one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just the first one. Why did I add this? I don't know. Go ask Jimmy 5 years ago.
So you implemented the and just as another bind, or
Yeah, essentially.
okay,
But it's basically useless.
Hmm.
Because it doesn't do what you would think it would want to do.
yeah. It's supposed to have this applicative character in the CE.
Yeah,
Like
this
it should
doesn't do
combine
what you
both
would
hello and
kind of
world?
expect. What's that?
Sorry, it should combine both the hello and the world to be applicative, or
Yeah, you would probably think that, but it doesn't. But
Yeah,
why
yeah,
doesn't it? Because result relies on a single error type, whereas validation comes back as a list. Well, this ends up being a result error list.
Mm.
so that would mean that this is another breaking change, but it's actually a bug fix. So
Basically, if anyone was
yeah.
relying on doing this, well, the weird thing is when you get into async result, because this gets into another debate that we have to mention. So a lot of people think when you have async, what if I want to have things that run in parallel? Async.sleep for a second. If I want things to run in parallel, I have to do some kind of ugly-ish work, whereas I don't want to bind against this particular thing. Let's actually get Phantoms to help us out. Thank you, Phantoms. There's this async start child, which wraps an async and an async. So basically this will start, and then I can start another thing here. And then I can run these. So these will allow these to run at the same time. So I didn't have this. Let's go ahead and just take this away. These don't need to actually be binds, so we'll just get this away. Let's run foo here instead. So after a second, we should get some things, hopefully. Oh, it's because I need to do it. This is, of course, an async computation expression, so this needs to do async run synchronously. There we go. We got hello, and then we got world after like a second. Probably a little bit harder to tell that. But if I wanted them to run at the same time, I could add this start child, hit the foo function, and we'll rerun the foo function here. So now they ran at the same time, essentially. There's a F-sharp issue about this where people would like to just do essentially this without start child.
That would be cool. That would be cool.
That would be cool. This does have a lot of other implications. There's a really long issue and discussion about this where Don is kind of opposed to this for good reasons, but because it basically introduces like thread pools, semantics, and stuff like that, and it gets a little weird. So I can kind of understand that, but at the same time, what do you think it does here?
If it has one return type, if it's only binding to one type,
Does it run these in parallel?
no, I don't think so. It will only show hello. I guess my guess is that will be only hello.
Let's find out.
But yes,
Yeah, it only, well, I guess we should print too, just to see if there's any side effects happening. Side effects are happening. That's not good. It does kind of run these in parallel in some way. But it still only returns the first thing. That's bad. That's real bad.
yeah, I'll say yes. Oh wow.
But they're actually still not running in parallel, but it is still waiting for this to finish before I return some result.
It's running in parallel the side effects, but the result it's only the first one rather than the
Well, it doesn't run in parallel. It runs this first,
yes.
then it runs this, and then because it finds this it says, okay, here's our first error, return that.
I see. I see.
So it's kind of doing the worst of both, where it's not running in parallel. It's also not joining your errors, but it incurs any side effects.
Yeah.
That's not good. Why did I do this? I don't know. Because I wasn't thinking.
Yeah.
So speaking of, can we do this anywhere currently? Well, if we actually reference iced tasks. If we open iced tasks. Iced tasks. We go ahead and open that. If I actually instead make this par async. We can in fact use this and bang. So let's get those, and then let's run foo or run this. They ran at the same time. So I do have an implementation in ICE tasks, but you have to opt into it to a specific parallel async. But you kind of know that you're opting into it because you're using a different computation expression now.
So you want to bring that ICE task implementation to FS Error Toolkit task result, or you want
Maybe, but it would be like there is a nice task package for FsToolkit that kind of does like this stuff. I probably won't do it until if someone wants it, they can add to it. But I think like I kind of want to follow like whatever I want to follow the same kind of semantics and things that is happening in F# or as well as I can.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
And so like when you are pulling in async result, you should be able to do this. The thing is here though, for async validation exists. But I'm getting some overload source errors. this is actually something I need to fix apparently, because I didn't fix this currently. So if I actually return an error list here though, does it stop complaining? It'll stop complaining if I return error list. So I have still some fixes to deal with that source overload stuff that we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
But this case particular should kind of do what you'd expect, which is both of these should incur side effects, but this does not run together. Like first we get hello and then we get world. Like these do not run in parallel. I guess I should like print out timestamps if we want that, because it's probably a little bit to see over stream. But this doesn't run in parallel, but it does have to go through each one of these sequentially, essentially, but then it accumulates. But if you were running async validation, would you expect these to run in parallel? I don't know. But like I said, if someone wants a parallel async validation, they can contribute that, I think, because all the stuff's there, just people have to run through the
Where
exercise
that
of doing it.
where that computation expression will need to be contributed to
Oh, so there is specifically a iced tasks thing. So I have FsToolkit error handling, and then there's one specifically for iced tasks, which is more or less allowing you to take the influence from iced tasks and put it under here. And so if you want all this like interesting different, see the previous session on iced tasks if you want to watch a little bit more about it. But that's kind of the question here is like, should I remove? I think I should remove and bang from places it doesn't make sense.
yeah, that makes sense.
And that's going to be a break and change for anybody that's been trying to use it that way.
As long as you have a good, upgrade from 4 to 5 documents that, clearly points these things out and then explains what's the thing best to do when you're in this situation, then that should be fine.
Yeah, especially something that has like some very weird behavior that's going to put you in a bad place. Like I definitely want to curb those kind of problems for sure. Like I feel a lot more strongly about fixing this than I do moving code around, because
Yeah.
it feels nice to be all in one package.
Yeah, definitely. I think some people will be relying on, the behavior was not meant to be that, was meant to be working like that. So yeah, for them it will be, I guess, even to say, hey, you have been doing something that is not, it's not meant to be happening. So that's good for him.
Right. And with that, I think I'm kind of out of things to talk about for V5. Those are all kind of the breaking changes and things that are coming up, and also, again, my feelings on some of them about, but this one I particularly am going to tackle next. I think the task result, I might push back and see if someone wants to contribute that. But I also might just end up doing it because it is, like, I'm just familiar enough with the code base, but regardless, getting other people to contribute is a good thing as well.
Yeah, you can create maybe some, good first issues or something on the repo, pointing out what is missing and what not, and and just put on them as a need help and issues, and if they will need it, they will either, they can get in contact with you or with the they can arrange some economical compensation, and that will be done. Because I remember seeing your GitHub profile a couple of years ago. I was like, you have a tier of sponsorship that you also can do this, but with some remuneration. So yeah.
Is there anything else, have anything else they'd like to bring up for V5 or anything they'd even love to see? I don't know. I know, Edgar, you said you use it, but I don't know if Florian and David, I don't know if you use it that often.
For me, it's
I really only encounter it when I'm working in FSAC. So
for me, the
I-
validation is really good. So I use the validation, we use the task result, the sync result, and that's what it's meant, to reduce all of that async result, async or validation thing. So that's why I use it, and it's perfect for me.
I want to just voice my gratitude for your work on this, because I know that it's used a lot and you're not getting the credit you should get for this.
Yeah, and it's also fun because I'm technically not like an owner of this repository. Because it's GitHub has some fun things when things aren't under an organization, so I need to think about that at some point as well. And if I can get this moved under like FS projects.
That would be it.
All right. Well, with that being out of the way, that answers a bunch of questions. I didn't get to this one question. What does God need with a starship? I don't know what he needs with a starship, but that's what it is. Star Trek joke, if you're wondering what that is. That's what this title is about. Also, as mentioned before, if you'd like to come join us for a session, you can come to amplifyingfsharp.io. Click the Join Us button. If you'd like to contribute, click on the Donate to the collective and talk to your employers about contributing as well. As much as individuals can help, companies can help more. And with that, I will say goodbye. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Jimmy.
thanks.
Thanks.